June 3, 1944. Southwick House, near Portsmouth, England. Rain lashes against the tall windows of the Allied Command Center. The wind howls through the Hampshire countryside, and thunder rolls over the English Channel. Inside the map-lined conference room, cigarette smoke curls through the air as the men who will decide the fate of Europe wait for one thing: the weather. General Dwight D. Eisenhower stands at the head of the long oak table, arms folded, his expression tight. Around him sit his most trusted commanders: Air Chief Marshal Trafford Lee Mallory, General Bernard Montgomery, Admiral Bertram Ramsay, and Air Chief Marshal Arthur Tedder. But the most important man in the room isn't wearing a uniform. He's Group Captain James Stagg, the Chief Meteorological Officer for the Supreme Allied Command. A Scotsman with a calm voice and furrowed brow, Stagg clutches his weather reports like a priest holding scripture. "Gentlemen," he begins, "if we launch on the 5th, we face disaster. Winds up to force 8, low visibility, and seas too rough for landing craft. Paratroopers would be scattered, bombers blind." The room is silent except for the hiss of rain against glass. Lee Mallory exhales smoke through his nose. "If we delay, the Germans will know we're waiting. The longer we sit here, the greater the risk of losing surprise." Eisenhower says nothing. He turns to the wall map. Red and blue arrows converge across northern France, pointing to a single word in bold letters: Normandy. Months of planning, deception, and sacrifice, all balanced on the mood of the Channel sky. Outside, the storm rages. Allied convoys toss in the swell. Pilots grounded across southern England stare at their aircraft, wings dripping with rain. Every man knows that the invasion, codenamed Operation Overlord, can only happen under specific conditions: low tide at dawn, calm seas, and moonlight for the airborne drops. That window opens only once every 2 weeks. If it's missed, the next opportunity won't come until mid-June. Eisenhower glances at the clock. It's 9:30 p.m. The decision can't wait much longer. "All right, Stagg," he says quietly. "When will the weather break?" Stagg hesitates. He knows his words will either greenlight the largest amphibious assault in human history or send it to ruin. "There's a possibility," he says, "of a short improvement, beginning late on the 5th, lasting perhaps 36 hours. The storm should subside, visibility moderate, winds around force 4. After that, it worsens again." The room stirs. Ramsay shakes his head. "A gamble," he mutters. Eisenhower doesn't reply. He walks to the window, rain streaming down the glass, and stares into the darkness. For nearly 5 years, the world has been consumed by war. Cities leveled, empires crumbling. This invasion is the final, desperate push to break Hitler's fortress Europe. And it all depends on the weather. "Stagg," he says finally, turning back. "You're certain?" "No one can be certain, sir," Stagg replies, his voice steady. "But I believe this will be your only chance." Eisenhower looks to his commanders. Montgomery nods slowly. "If we wait for perfect weather, we'll be here till winter." A long silence follows, the kind that can end or alter history. Finally, Eisenhower nods once. "All right, we go." He straightens, the decision made. Launch Overlord for June 6th. As the meeting breaks up, Stagg steps outside into the cold night air. The wind still howls, but somewhere behind the clouds, the stars are beginning to reappear. Across southern England, runners and dispatch riders deliver the coded orders. D-Day will be June 6th. By morning, nearly 7,000 ships and 150,000 men will be moving toward the Channel, unaware that their fate hinges on a brief, fragile calm in the storm. Meanwhile, 200 miles across the water in occupied France, German generals are coming to a very different conclusion. In Normandy, The sky still roars with thunder. And in the headquarters of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the man responsible for defending Hitler's Atlantic Wall, the weather reports say exactly what the Allies need them to say: that no invasion could possibly come in weather like this. The storm has hidden more than clouds. It has hidden an army. June 5th, 1944. La Roche-Guyon, France. Rain hammers the stone courtyard of a 17th century chateau, now headquarters of Army Group B, commanded by Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. Inside, maps of the French coast cover the walls, dotted with pins marking defensive sectors: Calais, Cherbourg, Normandy. Outside, the Seine rolls gray under the storm. Rommel stands at the window, his trench coat buttoned tight. Lightning flashes over the valley, reflecting in his glasses. "No army in its right mind would attempt an invasion in this weather," he mutters. "The Channel is a cauldron." His chief of staff, General Hans Speidel, nods. Meteorology reports confirm it. Heavy winds, low visibility. Even the Luftwaffe can't get reconnaissance flights over the coast. Rommel sighs. Part relief, part fatigue. He's been preparing for this moment for months, fortifying Hitler's Atlantic Wall with concrete bunkers, mines, and artillery. But the defenses are spread thin. The coastline is vast, and Hitler's obsession with Calais, the narrowest point between France and England, has left Normandy under-garrisoned. If the invasion came there, Rommel knew they would be outnumbered. But as thunder rolled across the river, it seemed the storm had bought him time. He turns to Speidel. "Inform Berlin I'm returning to Ulm tomorrow, my wife's birthday. If the weather holds, the Allies won't move until at least mid-June." "Yes, Herr Feldmarschall." By nightfall, Rommel's staff relaxes. Some officers head to Paris for brief leave. Others finally sleep for the first time in days. On the coast, panzer divisions stand idle, their crews sheltering inside barns from the rain. Luftwaffe patrols are grounded, and naval radar operators yawn in their dim-lit bunkers, watching a sea filled with static. The storm has lulled everyone into complacency. But far to the west, beyond the horizon, that same storm is breaking. June 5th, 1944. Southwick House, England. 0400 hours. The weather station glows under lamplight as Group Captain James Stagg spreads the latest meteorological charts across the table. Around him, Allied officers wait in tense silence. "Gentlemen," he begins, tapping a pencil against a barometric graph. "The low-pressure system is moving north toward Norway. Behind it, a ridge of high pressure from the Atlantic. Winds will drop to 15 knots, cloud base lifting by midnight." He looks at Eisenhower. "It's your window, sir. It'll hold for 24, maybe 36 hours. Eisenhower nods slowly. "Enough time to land 5 divisions? Admiral Ramsey clears his throat. "Barely. But after that, the Channel will turn lethal again. If we go now." The silence is absolute. The ticking of a clock fills the room. Eisenhower studies the faces of the men who have waited 4 long years for this moment. Monty, Ramsey, Tedder, Lee Mallory, each carrying the weight of millions. Then he simply says, "Let's go." No dramatics, no speeches, just resolve. Outside, the order spreads like a current through the night. In airfields across southern England, engines begin to rumble. Mechanics roll bombs under the bellies of C-47 Dakotas and Lancasters. Paratroopers check their rifles under the dim red glow of hangar lights. On the southern coast, 1,000 ships creak and groan in the dark. Their decks slick with rain, their crews waiting for dawn. The storm still rages, but the invasion is moving. Meanwhile, in occupied France, the German coastal radar network lights up faintly, momentarily detecting a flicker of movement in the Channel. A junior operator at Cherbourg squints at his screen. "Sir, possible activity near Isle of Wight." His superior shakes his head. "Phantom echoes. The sea's too rough. Go back to your post." And just like that, the signal is dismissed. In the early morning hours of June 6th, while Rommel drives toward his home in Ulm, 1,200 C-47s cross the coast of Normandy. Paratroopers of the 101st and 82nd Airborne Divisions leap into the night, their parachutes snapping open against the wind. Down below, villagers wake to the sound of thunder that isn't thunder, the echo of distant engines. German generals across northern France still believe the invasion, when it comes, will be at Calais. Their radar screens, blurred by weather, show nothing. Their coastal observers see only fog and rain. The storm has blinded them, and when the first Allied landing craft appear off the coast of Normandy, the German command will be asleep, both literally and strategically, because the same storm that nearly canceled Operation Overlord has become its greatest ally. June 6th, 1944, Normandy coast, France. 05:15 hours. The first gray light of dawn breaks through the clouds, revealing a sight no German soldier on the Atlantic Wall ever expected to see. The horizon. The vast, endless horizon of the English Channel is gone. In its place, a moving wall of steel and smoke. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and transports, more than 5,000 vessels, stretch from one edge of the world to the other. The sea itself seems alive with motion. Landing crafts surge forward through the chop, waves slapping their hulls. Above them, swarms of C-47s and gliders fill the sky like flocks of steel birds. For the sentries of the 352nd Infantry Division guarding the beaches of Omaha and Utah, it's a waking nightmare. One young German private rubs his eyes in disbelief. Mein Gott, it's an invasion. He runs for the phone line to headquarters, but the line is dead. The storm had cut communications overnight. Moments later, the guns of the Allied fleet open fire. The ground shakes. Pillars of flame erupt along the coastline as 16-inch shells from the USS Texas and HMS Rodney slam into concrete bunkers. Entire sections of the Atlantic Wall disappear under cascades of smoke and sand. At 06:30, the first wave of American landing craft hits the beaches. Ramps drop into waist-deep water, and men pour out. Riflemen of the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions, running, falling, crawling toward a shore lined with machine guns. The storm hasn't vanished entirely. Waves still crash, visibility still shifts. But that's part of the miracle. The weather is just bad enough to keep the Germans blind, yet just good enough to let the Allies land. Further west, at Utah Beach, Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt Jr. splashes ashore with his cane, realizing his entire regiment has drifted 2 kilometers off course. Instead of panic, he grins and says the words that would become legend. "We'll start the war from right here." The wind whips across the channel, carrying smoke, sea spray, and the sound of war. The deep thud of naval guns, the scream of rocket bombardments, the rattle of machine guns echoing off cliffs. At the German headquarters in St. Lo, 0700 hours, General Friedrich Dollmann of the 7th Army stares at the radio operator, who repeats the same impossible message. "Large-scale landings reported between Caen and Cherbourg, sir. Multiple sectors under attack." Dollmann frowns. That can't be right. It's a diversion. It must be Calais. The weather makes a major landing impossible. He turns to his staff. "Contact Panzergruppe West. Tell them to hold positions near Pas de Calais." We wait for confirmation. Across northern France, confusion reigns. Field reports are dismissed as local raids. Reserve divisions await orders that never come. Rommel, the man who could have acted fastest, is still hundreds of kilometers away in Germany, celebrating his wife's birthday. The storm had convinced the German High Command that the Channel was impassable. And now, the Allies are storming ashore under the cover of that very assumption. Meanwhile, back at Southwick House, 8:30 hours. Eisenhower stands by the radio, cigarette trembling slightly between his fingers. Around him, staff officers listen in silence as reports come in. Omaha, heavy resistance. Utah, secured sector. Sword, Juneau, gold, advancing inland. The invasion is working, but barely. Omaha is a bloodbath. Men pinned down on open sand, tanks sinking before they reach the shore. The Channel winds make the landings chaotic, and the tide swallows equipment by the ton. Eisenhower exhales slowly, eyes fixed on the map. "It's in God's hands now," he murmurs. But within hours, the beachhead begins to stabilize. The Allies push inland, first a mile, then 2. By nightfall, 156,000 troops are ashore. The greatest amphibious invasion in history, executed under the narrowest meteorological window imaginable, has succeeded. And while German generals in France still debate whether this is the real invasion or a feint, the Allies have already secured their foothold in Europe. That evening, at his temporary headquarters near Bayeux, a young American meteorologist named Wallace Eckert writes a brief note in his logbook. "Window held. Weather turning again by dawn. If we had waited one more day, the fleet would still be in port." He was right. Within 24 hours, gale-force winds returned to the Channel, strong enough to capsize landing craft, drown paratroopers, and scatter ships. The D-Day Armada would have been destroyed before it ever reached the French coast. The storm had opened for one day, just one, and the Allies had seized it. Section 4. The Generals Who Slept Through History. June 6, 1944. 09:30 hours, Château de la Roche-Guyon, France. The great limestone walls of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel's headquarters are silent, except for the hum of teleprinters and the murmur of staff officers exchanging reports. The storm outside has faded to drizzle. But inside the building, the fog of disbelief hangs thick. Rommel is not there. He is somewhere on the Autobahn, hundreds of kilometers away, his staff car cutting through the rain on his way back from Ulm, unaware that the largest invasion in history is unfolding on the beaches he was sworn to defend. In his absence, General Hans Speidel fields a flood of frantic messages. Enemy paratroops at Sainte-Mère-Église. Mass landings at Ouistreham and Vierville. Naval bombardment off Gold Beach. Each new transmission sounds more fantastical than the last. One officer shakes his head. Impossible. The Führer's meteorologists reported the Channel was impassable until Thursday. Speidel slams his fist on the map table. Tell Berlin it's real. Tell them it's happening now. He orders the 21st Panzer Division to move toward Caen. But their tanks must first navigate a maze of bombed bridges and cratered roads. Every hour counts, and every delay buys the Allies time to expand their beachheads. At Hitler's headquarters in Berchtesgaden, the situation is no better. The Führer is asleep, and his staff refuses to wake him. Only he can authorize the movement of armored reserves, and none dare act without his order. Let him sleep, one adjutant whispers. It's probably a diversion. By the time Hitler finally wakes near noon, thousands of Allied troops have already landed, and the German command network is paralyzed by confusion. To the east, Field Marshal von Rundstedt fumes over the telephone. The only question now is, where is Rommel? Meanwhile, on the Normandy coast, the beaches are chaos. Smoke drifts across the sea, blotting out the sun. The sand is choked with wreckage, twisted landing craft, burned-out tanks, and bodies rolling in the surf. And yet, amid the destruction, the Allies are gaining ground. At Gold Beach, British commandos push inland toward Bayeux, their uniforms soaked, rifles caked with sand. At Juno, Canadian troops breach the seawall under relentless sniper fire. On Sword Beach, tanks of the 27th Armored Brigade rumble past pillboxes still smoldering from naval bombardment. And at Omaha, the bloodiest of all, men claw their way up the cliffs, hauling wounded comrades behind them. By noon, a single radio operator finally transmits the words Eisenhower has been waiting for. Omaha secure, casualties heavy, but beach held. Across the channel, in the command tent at Southwick House, Eisenhower lets out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. His aide, General Walter Bedell Smith, smiles faintly. "They made it, sir." Eisenhower doesn't smile back. "They made it," he says quietly. "But we're only at the beginning." Afternoon, June 6th. Normandy. The storm that had nearly doomed the invasion is returning. The wind rises again, whipping through the hedgerows, scattering smoke and dust across the fields. Allied engineers struggle to unload supplies from pitching landing craft as waves slam against the beach. A corporal from the 2nd Ranger Battalion, soaked and exhausted, looks up at the gray sky. "Hell of a day for a war," he mutters. But in that chaos lies victory. The same weather that blinded the Germans now shields the Allies from a massive counterattack. Luftwaffe squadrons can't take off from their drenched runways. German artillery spotters can't see through the mist. The Atlantic Wall, built over 4 long years, has fallen in less than 12 hours. By nightfall, Eisenhower receives the final confirmation. Over 156,000 men ashore, nearly 5,000 ships deployed, and the foothold in Europe secured. June 7th, 1944. Berchtesgaden, Germany. Hitler slams his fist onto the situation map, sending pencils and coffee cups scattering. "They tricked us! They used the weather," he rages. His generals stand in silence, afraid to speak. It's true. The entire Reich's meteorological service had predicted a storm so severe that no sane commander would attempt an invasion. German radar had been disrupted by atmospheric interference, and their reconnaissance flights grounded. The Allies had struck precisely in that blind spot, the one gap in the storm that no German forecaster saw. Later, General Jodl, his face pale, mutters to another officer, "They didn't just outfight us. They outguessed the sky itself." In the coming weeks, Rommel would walk the ruins of his Atlantic Wall. Shattered bunkers, flooded trenches, burnt wreckage stretching for miles. He'd turn to his aide and say softly, "The invasion was not lost on the beaches. It was lost in the clouds." Because in the end, the greatest deception of D-Day wasn't just the false army at Dover, or the phantom radio traffic of Operation Fortitude. It was nature itself. A storm that shielded an armada, blinded an empire, and opened the road to Europe's liberation. June 6th, 1944. The day the weather turned the tide of history.